The breaking news was a milestone. One of the nation's premier primate centers, where some of the most heinous monkey experiments take place, announced that it would begin the process to transition into a sanctuary. Details next on the PETA podcast with Emil Guillermo. Welcome to the PETA podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at animal rights, brought to you by PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On this episode, the Oregon Health and Science University's Board of Directors unanimously passed a resolution to begin the process that would end the work of its Oregon National Primate Research Center. The university will now negotiate with the Primate Center's main funder, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, on drawing up the transition plan for the 60-year-old Primate Center, a house of torture and pain for monkeys, to become a sanctuary. The center kills about 1,300 monkeys a year, but breeds to keep the number of imprisoned monkeys to about 5,000. That will stop as negotiations continue. So is it just a good first step or more significant than that? Here's my conversation with PETA's Amy Meyer, Associate Director of Primate Experimentation Campaigns, on what happened in Oregon and why it should make animal and science lovers cheer, on the PETA podcast with Emil Guillermo.
The Oregon Health and Science University's Board of Directors held a meeting on a resolution that they drafted. And this resolution, mostly the main thing that it would do is allow the OHSU president and board of directors to begin negotiations with the National Institutes of Health to transform the Oregon National Primate Research Center, which is one of the largest primate laboratories in the country, into a sanctuary. And it didn't stop there. It also had a bit that would make it so that while these discussions are happening over the next 6 months, that the Primate Center has to suspend breeding more monkeys into existence unless it was required for a specific project. But, what they've been doing is just breeding hundreds of animals every year. And so there's a pause on that, which means hundreds of monkeys won't be born into a life where they're looking to not use these animals in research anymore. So there's no point in bringing more of them into existence. And it really is the start of trying to put the Primate Center on a path to closure. And I've never seen anything like it with these primate centers. This is just uncharted territory that we have leadership from one of these institutions looking to transform a laboratory this size into a sanctuary.
All right, now, I don't want to throw cold water on this, but, I just want to just take this incrementally. It sounds like, all right, they didn't close it, but so it sounds like if you really wanted to pump it up, you might say it's a good first step, but you say it's more than just a good first step.
It's absolutely a good first step, but it's also, it's like a leap. It's not just a baby step. This is a leap forward that this is even happening. And the National Institutes of Health have also publicly acknowledged that they are in communication with a National Primate Research Center to look at transitioning to sanctuary, which we know is Oregon now. And so it's just huge. We haven't seen the National Institutes of Health be interested in this before. We haven't seen leadership from an NPRC's institution be interested in this before. The fact that these conversations are happening is just remarkable.
Now, tell me about the system and how it's set up nationwide. There are how many primate centers nationwide? Oregon is the biggest. It's one of the premier ones on the West Coast, next to Washington State on the West Coast, right?
Yes. So Oregon's is one of the largest. Oregon's has more than 5,000 monkeys confined there. Mm-hmm. And then there's 6 other national primate research centers around the country. There's Washington's, which is at University of Washington. There's one at the University of California, Davis, one at Tulane University, one at University of Wisconsin-Madison, one at Emory University, and then which one am I missing? Oh, Southwest, which is at an institute in San Antonio, Texas, called Texas Biomedical Research Institute.
I mean, it's significant to know where these things are on the map because I think the last one to close was Harvard's back, 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, that was at least 10 years. Yeah, I think right about 10 years ago, Harvard shut theirs down.
And you would think that if Harvard shut down, then maybe all of them would, but that hasn't been the case. Why, do you think?
That's a good question. Harvard is the top medical research university in the country. Now, today, 10 years after they shut down the Primate Center, clearly that did not impact the amount of good research they can be doing. It's only improved the amount of good research they're investing in and doing, and not wasting our tax dollars on experimenting on monkeys that's not getting us the cures we all want and deserve, and causing a tremendous amount of cruelty in the process. So, yeah, you would have hoped that others would have followed suit, but I think the money kept coming in from the National Institutes of Health, and so they've kept taking it. And now we see the National Institutes of Health have been giving every indication that they want to be focusing on what's called non-animal research methods and putting money towards that rather than into experiments on primates. And so now I think we'll start seeing these other remaining national primate research centers start looking at transitioning their plans because they're going to follow the money.
Yeah, and it really is maybe the beginning of a transition because, as you said, NIH, the National Institutes of Health, kept giving money to these centers, and they just kept using the money. What was the difference now? Why do you think that they're now looking to closure? Is it because NIH the light bulb has gone off, or it's because the new scientific methods are so great, or is it because of years of failure where they haven't really produced anything to to justify the millions of dollars spent at these primate centers like in Oregon?
I think it's really a collection of so many things, to be honest. It's all of those things you just mentioned. And then we also had, in the last year, we had some really bold Oregon legislators who were pushing OHSU to do something about the Cruel Primate Center that has been having just violation after violation of federal animal welfare laws. It's been an absolute train wreck up there for the animals. We had 93,000 members and supporters in Oregon who've been taking action with us, especially in the last year, but really for so many years. PETA's been focusing on these primate centers for a long time. We've had investigations up there. We've held a lot of demonstrations and public outreach and just a lot of pressure, but we ramped it up in the last year and we're starting to see that come together now too.
And it has to be pretty significant when all of a sudden this big primate center is now saying, we're going to become a sanctuary. I mean, that's like the opposite. That's like it's opposite of what they're doing. They're saying we're essentially going to oversee freedom and liberation for the monkeys to a degree, a sanctuary, right? I mean, that's like the total opposite.
Yeah, it would be providing these monkeys a semblance of the lives that they've long been denied. And frankly, they deserve at least that much. Some of those monkeys up there have been kept in cages that are, the size of our kitchen cupboards at home, and they can live for decades up there. Some of them are 20 years old,
Mhm.
and they deserve just this semblance of a natural life where they can feel the warmth of the sun and they can have choice and agency. They can decide who they are around. They can actually have a social group, all these things that should come with a transition to sanctuary. And, it frankly, it should be on the institution and it should be on the National Institutes of Health to fund the sanctuary for these monkeys because they've been responsible for confining them for 60 years.
And so animals, primates, were bred there, bred to be experimented on. Some are still there. Some don't even know what it's like to be a monkey, I guess, right? I mean, they just know what it's like to be inside a cage, inside a place for experiments. What kind of experiments did they have? What was the kind of life that they led up there?
I mean, almost anything you can think of they were doing up there, infecting them with deadly diseases. They've been doing some really cruel experiments that just seem pointless, even from a non-expert point of view. They were addicting some monkeys to THC, and then they were male monkeys, and then they were electroejaculating them to see what the impact was of THC on their sperm count and things like this that are just, we do not need to be doing this to monkeys at all. Um, and so it's there's and beyond even the experiments themselves, they are just confined in these concrete block rooms, and there's no natural light or breeze that can penetrate through these places. They are just paralyzed by their own fear and boredom and loneliness. And it's really just time that we shut these places down.
So the negotiations begin as the transition moves towards sanctuary. And I guess, as you mentioned, the most significant thing may be no more new breeding of monkeys. You can't bring more new monkeys into the situation. That's got to be a plus.
It's certainly a plus for those several hundred during this 6 months who won't be born into this existence. And for those mothers, some of these babies are taken from their mothers within days of being born. We've seen records of some of these monkeys being shipped up to the other primate research center at the University of Washington when they're only a couple weeks old. And they're so young they have to be sent with pacifiers, and they have ulcers on their thumbs from sucking their thumbs because they were pulled away from their mom so young. So those kinds of babies being born into this existence won't be born into this awful existence in the next 6 months while the discussions take place. And then, of course, if it is able to get secured and transitioned to a sanctuary, that would be part of the sanctuary model too. It won't be continuing to breed animals to keep a sanctuary going for hundreds of years. The goal would be for the sanctuary to just be a life for the animals there now, and then shut down when they've all lived out their natural lives.
All right. So this is great. The future is bright for the animals, or it seems to, as the negotiations begin. But what about the experiments? I mean, did they amount to anything scientifically? Are we going to lose anything because of this halting of the experimentation that is taking place there, or does this just prove that there was nothing virtuous or nothing significant going on there anyway?
Monkeys are not necessary or relevant. Monkey science is just bad science. Monkeys are not miniature humans, and the more we learn about these experiments on monkeys, the more we learn of how they are not a good model for human diseases. Not only are they a different species, but they're also like their anatomy, their biology, their basic physiology and anatomy is so compromised because they themselves are living in a profoundly unnatural state. I wouldn't want to rely on research for my own human health on a person who was confined in this kind of environment because they're driven insane, and that's going to impact your data. And there was a great neuroscientist at the meeting who brought up some of those issues as well. But fortunately, we don't have to choose between the monkeys and the humans. We can save both of us by doing away with these experiments on monkeys and investing in modern, non animal, and human relevant research methods, which is the direction the federal government is going in.
Well, and that sounds like a wise choice, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you did mention being at that board meeting this week, and that must have been like a debate between people who wanted the primate center shut down because it's cruel, it's no value to science, and there must have been people who said, "Hey, wait a minute! I'm a scientist. I'm getting money. I got my job. There's jobs here at stake." So what was that debate like? What was it like being at that meeting?
It was quite an experience. It was a very emotionally charged room. It was absolutely packed. I've been going to the OHSU board meetings for over a year, and I've never seen the room that packed. They had to have an overflow room, and it was passionate people on both sides of the issue, And really it was all, it was people who work at the Primate Center, people who are doing experiments up there, and animal care staff on the one end, and then people who are concerned about the science implications and what is happening to the animals on the other. And there were public comments allowed from both. And each time people in the audience, like half of the audience would cheer for one side and half would cheer for the other. And there were definitely, some unkind things said from people who work in the Primate Center to some of our supporters. And they had some offensive language on science directed at PETA and us, but we stayed very just professional and wanted to get our message clear to the board.
Boy, it must have seemed like being at a Super Bowl or something, or a game in some ways.
Yeah, it was definitely divisive. It was
Yeah.
absolutely divisive, and it was yeah, so it was quite the experience to see. And I don't know of a time where I've seen that many people on like the far ends of this issue, people who are so passionate that they will take off work on a Monday to come be a presence for the animals, and then people who are experimenting on these animals all in the same room. It was a very unique day.
Well, tell me about the board. The board is how many members, and they had to hear this, and they had to be persuaded one side or the other. How many votes were needed? What was the ultimate vote? And I guess which side? I guess we know who won the persuasion battle, but what was it like? And was there a turning point where you said, "Oh, here's the testimony that is swinging the board around back to the animal rights side"?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of really good testimony given at the meeting. And I believe there are 8 members on the board of directors and the president of the university. They're all there. And they did give some comments before they made their vote, and it ended up being a unanimous vote in support of the resolution. So the entire board voted in support of the resolution. One thing that some of them did say that was like trying to, I think, ease concerns from the people at the Primate Center was that, this isn't the final answer. This is authorizing us to begin negotiations, like to see where we can get. As you said, this is a one-step thing, but I it was clear that the the industry that is experimenting on animals, not only just this primate center, but across the country, who were rallying, trying to pressure the board, they see how huge of a leap that this is, and so do we. This is such a huge leap of progress for monkeys and for good science.
Yeah, and not just a leap because you want to close it down, but it's a necessary leap, as you say, for science. So talk about the science, because in the end, I mean, because if it's researchers against researchers, you have one generation saying we like to do it this way, the old way, and these new researchers saying, well, we could do better science and get to better answers this new modern way. Tell me what's in the offing if you get rid of the primates and you just go with these new ways. Do we have better science, better results for people?
Absolutely. There's cutting edge non animal research methods like computer simulations and 3D cultures of human cells, and they're already available now. And they've been shown time and again to be more accurate than the crude and lethal experiments on animals. And the NIH has been announcing bold plans to be embracing these human relevant methods. They're investing in them. So it's really wise that OHSU is recognizing this and recognizing that it will fall behind and continue to lose money. They lose money every year on the Primate Center already, if they're not moving to embrace more effective science and science of the future.
Yeah, and this negotiation is beginning, but is there a sense that from the other side, the non-animal rights side, that maybe we can rally and we can get them to flip over and see it the old science way? Or does this look like an inevitable, this is part of, modern science, and you're going to adopt AI stuff. This is like, the rest of society adopting AI stuff. Modern science has to go in this new direction. Or do you think the old guard has a chance to maybe say, yeah, those monkeys, we really need those monkeys.
I think that the old guard is going to keep thinking that, and to an extent, you can almost understand if you've built your career 30 years doing this, it would be hard to admit that everything that you're doing has not gotten anywhere and is going to get you nowhere, and to that you need to relearn how to do a completely different kind of science. But that's what needs to happen ultimately, of course. So I do think that they will stand by and keep digging in their heels and probably be pressuring the National Institutes of Health not to change money from their type of research over to a sanctuary. And so, PETA is encouraging our supporters. It's easy if you go to PETA.org. You can yourself send an email to the National Institutes of Health, really thanking them for being bold and looking at transitioning this primate center to a sanctuary and encouraging them to move forward with that. They've invested billions of our taxpayer dollars over the last 60 years into these failing primate centers. It's time for them to do what's right for the animals finally and phase this out and just move the money into more human relevant research methods that are also going to be a lot cheaper to produce.
Mm, yeah.
Monkeys are very expensive to take care of long term, over 60 years.
Yeah. Well, tell me about what PETA has done over the last year to get us to this point, and what it will continue to do, and how effective. Clearly, it was effective if we got a vote to the board, and the board said, "Yeah, let's take this big leap toward sanctuaries." But tell me about the activity of PETA to date, and what's going to continue to keep the pressure on, so that people are assured the board makes the right decision.
Well, like always, PETA is pursuing every angle possible to keep pressure on anywhere that is experimenting on animals. And in the last year, especially as we've ramped up our efforts, we were working with state legislators to try to work from a legislative angle. And they passed a budget note requiring OHSU to look into what it would cost to transition to a sanctuary and requiring OHSU not to spend any state funds on the Primate Center. We've held some really creative demonstrations. We've brought these enormous binocular displays to campus and to uh, the legislature here that show the contrast of monkeys in their natural homes versus how they are forced to live in primate centers like the Oregon National Primate Research Center. We did light up banners over interstates and other creative demonstrations. We've been at all the board meetings providing public comment. We've been pressuring the USDA to issue citations when there's been violations reported by whistleblowers to us. We've had multiple whistleblowers come to us because we are the last hope of creating change that they can see. So really, it's just been every angle possible, advertisements to raise public awareness. And we're going to keep doing that until this place is shut down. There's no more experiments happening, and these monkeys get that chance of a life worth living.
Now, for the benefit of people who are supporters of PETA, who donate, who do the activism and the email, what's a kind of behind the scenes thing that you can share to help them understand how their efforts are important, how their efforts have helped you, and the people who are there on the ground achieve what they did this week with getting the board to move toward sanctuaries.
Well, there's been a few times in the last year, especially where we've called on especially our Oregon members and supporters, but sometimes nationally too, to be writing to the board or writing to their members in the state legislature, their representatives. And it's made such a tremendous impact because they're getting thousands of messages. They see how much people care about this and how many of their constituents, if they're representatives, or just people in the community, it's very clear that the majority of people want the primate center to close, just like the majority of people in America don't support experimenting on animals generally. But sometimes these leaders don't know that, and so it's so hugely helpful. And the fact that we had, I think, nearly 60 people show up in support of us at that board meeting on a Monday morning, it made a huge impact, I think, for the board to see all of those people.
And then you also had the countless emails as well.
Yes, yeah, just emails coming through, by the thousands. I think they said that they had received at least 7,000 emails ahead of the public, from the public comments, before getting to the meeting. And I know a lot of those were PETA supporters, and we're just, so grateful.
See, a lot of people would say, "Oh, how important is this email? If I send this email, how important?" And they don't see it, but it does have an impact.
Yeah. And, sometimes it is hard to know the impact because you don't get a response back directly. But a lot of times, those state legislators will have a meeting with us because they've been hearing from their constituents. So when I come to them saying, we want to discuss the Primate Center, they're like, oh, yeah, my people have been telling me about this. I need to learn more about it. And it just really gives an opportunity for us to build those relationships and push the issue forward because so many people care about it and they see that so many people care about it.
And so what's next? And I guess the pressure, you got to keep putting the pressure on, even though you're negotiating, you got to put the pressure on because certainly the other side isn't giving up and they're going to try to think of counter arguments or counter things to do to mess up this period, which is what, a 6-month negotiation period?
That's right. Yeah. And again, we are so grateful to the OHSU president and board of directors that they are willing to take this huge step, even in the face of being confronted very quite aggressively from some of their faculty. They're still willing to do this. So we have a tremendous amount of faith in them that they are really trying to do right here. But we will be keeping the pressure on. We also, want to be keeping the pressure on the National Institutes of Health with going through with these negotiations and really showing up for these monkeys. They've already actually, the National Institutes of Health have made it a policy that has allowed grant funding to go towards retirement of animals. And that's the kind of thing we need to be seeing so that they can they can make the money available for these animals to experience sanctuary.
All right. So if all goes well, we should have sanctuary by June or July.
I guess it would be hard to say exactly when it would transform to the sanctuary, but I think we should at least know that the funding is secured by June or July. And so we will be relentlessly pushing for that until then. And, we have primatologists on our team who have extensive experience in the sanctuary world. And so we will also be sending any input from them and really be available in any way to help with actually what it takes to transition these places. And I think that would be really beneficial for them.
Well, we'll be following your moves. Amy Meyer, Associate Director of Primate Experimentation Campaigns. Boy, that's a mouthful. Associate Director of Primate Experimentation Campaigns. What's that an acronym of? PEC?
I should get an acronym. That would be nice. I like this idea.
Amy, congratulations and good luck to you. We'll check back with you, certainly before the summer.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Emil.
PETA's Amy Meyer, Associate Director of Primate Experimentation Campaigns, explaining why just starting the negotiation period is a big deal as the Oregon National Primate Center builds its plan to turn into a sanctuary for monkeys. And it's a move toward being on the cutting edge of non-animal science and maybe even the beginning of the end of all the other national primate research centers. Remember, Harvard shut down years ago, and it's been a while for the others to sort of fall like dominoes, but I think this may be a key thing, especially when you have the Primate Center negotiating with NIH, because they just want the funding dollars to mean something, to mean better science and mean mean cures for people. That's not what has happened after 60 years at the Oregon National Primate Center. For more, go to PETA.org. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to send the link of this show to your friends. Tell them you like the PETA podcast. You can contact us at PETA.org. You can see me at AMOK.com. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to as well as rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.